Also brought to you by the Boatyard in Fort Lauderdale. Eat local, but stay coastal at the Boatyard Restaurant. The Boatyard is located at 1555 Southeast 17th Street in Fort Lauderdale. That means you can come by boat or you can come by car. Enjoy the nautical atmosphere, whether you sit inside in the cold AC or outside on the patio bar. The Boatyard has something for everyone. Monday through Friday, happy hour, where local favorite is bar bites and handcrafted cocktails. Open for lunch, dinner, and the popular Sunday brunch. And don't forget, Ladies' Night, every Thursday night from 7 to 10 p.m., where ladies drink free. Dock and dine at the famous Boatyard in Fort Lauderdale. I am sure you'll have a great experience.
Clear the airways. The Lunker Dog is on the air.
Are you ready? This is the Real Guy Podcast.
You like Joe Rogan?
Yeah.
When I was first learning about podcasts, of course, that's what I was like, all right, well, who's the best? Who's got the biggest? So I started listening to Rogan. And then I was like, wow, that's pretty good. But then I started doing the podcast, and I realized that almost everybody that Rogan has standing in front of him for his interviews and stuff is some sort of professional that's kind of used to talking and being in front of a camera.
Yeah, that's true.
Has some sort of talent or whatever. So I'm like, hey, that's not fair. I'm interviewing fishermen and stuff.
Right.
Kind of dumb as they come, or at least sound that way. So,
No, yeah. And, well, some of the scientist people he has on there, like the crazy, just out of control, way off in left field, but they still come across as like, you listen to it, like, you know what, that could be. And then I'm like, wait a minute, no, it can't.
Anyway, I started the recording. Today I got Rick from Rick's Real Adventures, all the way down to South Florida from Utah.
That's right.
Rick, thanks for coming into the Lunker Dog Studio and being part of the Real Guy Network. We appreciate you having you.
Pleasure is mine.
So, are you down here on business?
Down here for business, yes. And every time I come down, it's real estate based. So, come down for a few days, teach a class, and try to get a little fishing in while I'm down here. So.
But you seem to get a little fishing in no matter where you go.
I do take a fishing rod with me everywhere I travel. Yeah.
And that is that where Rick's Real Adventures kind of?
Yeah. As I started doing it, my wife's like, "Hey, you should start." It started off as a blog, and actually, I still have the blog that I haven't written on in a while. But she's like, "You should start just writing about stuff." Because even when we were first married, I just put her on. She's like, "You plan on fishing?" I'm like, I don't know, but if the opportunity comes up, I'll be prepared for it, kind of thing. And so it kind of started from there and kind of grew.
So you plan a fishing trip or not necessarily a fishing trip, a destination, and then you'd plug the fishing part into it.
Yeah.
And then you started a blog to record and document all the different places and stuff and experiences.
Yeah. So the thing that got me like really into fishing. I grew up fishing here and there, but nothing big, little trout streams in Utah and what have you. But I was really big into hunting. Mm-hmm. And as I got married, my wife's not against hunting, but I was gone a lot, and she doesn't care to go. So she's like, one day she's like, hey, Rick, if I know you like fishing. I'll go fishing with you. You can go fishing anytime you want if you don't hunt as much. And I'm like, well, that sounds like a winner to me. So I just ended up switching tactics a little bit. And there was a trip that we took. Where did we go? It was the White Cloud Mountain Range of Idaho. So my oldest brother, Jason, always would plan these hiking trips. Okay. And he's like, hey, we should do like a brother hiking trip. We'll do a 50-miler every year. And I said, well, is there going to be any kind of fishing? Because I don't want to just hike. I mean, it's pretty, don't get me wrong, but
you'd like to hike to a destination you might be able to catch a fish.
Yes, or anything other than seeing a view. That didn't motivate me. And so he says, yeah, we'll plug fishing into it. And he was into fly fishing at the time. And so, yeah, he just started booking these trips. And he would, or not book the trips, I should say. He'd plan the trips.
Right.
And at any rate, he'd say, yeah, we're going to hike this many miles this day, and then we've got these lakes to fish, and then we'll go to the next day. So yeah, for about 8-9 years, we did a hiking trip every single year somewhere in Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, or Utah. And this particular, the very first one we ever went on, I was just getting into fly fishing, so I could cast a few feet, whatnot, and the alpine lakes are very user-friendly, let's say. The fish don't see very many people up there, so it's easier to catch them. So we'd put on dry flies, things of that nature, and we caught this fish that I had never seen before. It was a golden trout. At the time, I had no idea what that was.
Right.
But turns out they're very difficult to catch as far as it's difficult to get into the area where they're at, and then generally they're a little more difficult to catch when you're there. And so I landed one, and none of us, I mean, we're like, oh, that's a cool fish. We just thought it was some kind of a weird cutthroat. And turns out it was a golden trout, and so we all kind of freaked out when we were back.
All of a sudden, you found out it was a big deal.
Yeah, I was like, well, geez, that's cool. And granted, the biggest one we caught was like 12 inches. But
it's kind of like been a repetitive thing with you.
Yeah, I had that experience with you as well, my first snook. Yeah.
Right. I take Rick out fishing for the first time. How many years ago was that?
Yeah, probably close to, what, 8
or 9 years ago, maybe? Yeah. And he catches this horse of a snook. I mean, 43-inch ear or something like that. Really big fish.
Monster.
And we caught a lot of big fish that night. And then I didn't see Rick for a while. And then I get a phone call from him. And he's like, well, geez, Jeff, I didn't realize that all those fish we caught.
Yeah, well, when I caught it at the time, and I bet you probably read that because you mentioned, he's like, dude, this is a huge fish. And you actually, if I remember right, you actually asked, hey, do you want to mount this? Or I've got a guy. And I was like, I'm good, But no, I didn't realize till after that. That was the first snook trip I ever did, and that to this day is by far the biggest snook I've ever caught. 42 inches long. I don't remember the girth now, but
it was a big fish.
That night, between me and the other guy on the boat, we landed probably a dozen that were 15 plus pounds
20
easy.
Pound fish, yeah. Those were the good old days when the big snooks were just hanging around here.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So that happened with the golden trout.
Yeah, so with the golden trout, that kind of triggered something in me I thought, well, that's kind of cool. I caught a fish that not a lot of people have either caught or come to find out fly fishermen that's high on their bucket list to catch one of those. So I said, well, I'm going to set a goal to try to catch every trout species in Utah. And so I did that, and I'm like, well, I'm going to try to catch every species in Utah. That's my new goal. I want to catch every game fish that Utah has.
So you just kept raising the bar for yourself.
Yeah, and that got me into really searching out species. So I started researching just crazy species, like mostly freshwater. I'm just now you can tell with you fishing with me, saltwater's not my strong suit, but no, the freshwater stuff. I just started doing research on all sorts of crazy stuff, which got me looking into the Amazon River and the big arapaimas and stuff like that. But it all started in Idaho, catching a little 12-inch trout that I had never seen before, and now that's really what drives me fishing. Is I want to catch new species. I don't care if it's 4 inches long or 4 feet long. I get the same kick out of it.
All right, cool. So that's brought you pretty much. Well, it's all brought you all over the world.
Yeah.
Just for the audience, I mean, if you could, just kind of give them a little rundown of all the different countries that you've been in the last decade or so. Because I watch the stuff through Facebook and your Instagram, and it seems like not more than a month will go by, and I'm like, whoa, damn, look what Rick got. Where the hell is he? And I'm looking at some crazy fish, and you're in some beautiful setting, and you're smiling, and I'm like, Jesus, this guy's doing it again, and then again, and again, and again. So yeah, if you could give us a little rundown, all the different places you've been, kind of like a laundry list, and then we'll break them down to what you thought was the most challenging and the easiest and the most pleasant and the hardest and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so the places I've been, I've been to 30 countries total so far, and I've probably fished 20 of them.
Okay.
Starting, of course, U.S., Canada, Mexico, Bahamas. I mean, most of the Caribbean,
right, all the Caribbean
countries. Yeah, Australia, Fiji, Guyana, Thailand, Singapore, Vietnam.
See, what I'm trying, I want the audience to realize that Rick really fishes the world. He's going around the world,
and I've been lucky to have in some of those aspects. It's been on a business trip, like this one now. We're doing this podcast. I'm down here for business, and so work paid me to come here, but I get done at a certain hour, and I can do whatever I want after that. So that's why I pack fishing poles and do all of that. But on the other end, where I'm paying for the trips, I try to pick trips that my wife will enjoy going as well. But then I'll make a day where I can go do something, right? Like when we went to Thailand, it wasn't to fish, but we made a day so I could go out and try to catch something crazy. Right.
It's funny you mentioned Thailand, because tomorrow you're going to go out and try to get a snakehead.
I am. Yep.
And you never caught a snakehead before?
Never caught one before.
I don't know. This is probably a good 10 or 15 years ago. I get a call from the IGFA, and they got this guy in from Thailand who they're giving a Lifetime Achievement Award for catching the biggest snakehead ever.
Like the giant snakehead there in Thailand?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he was in town to get this award and wanted to catch a tarpon. So the people from the IGFA were like, well, if you want to catch a tarpon in Fort Lauderdale, call Jeff. So they lined up the trip, and I took the guy from Thailand. And it's a funny story because he had his wife with him. And I didn't realize that in Thailand, like, they want to be pale as they possibly can be. Oh, yeah. And they want their skin to be they never want it to touch the sun.
Yeah, exact opposite of the U.S.
Right, exact opposite of us. So the guy's on the boat, and he doesn't speak English very well. The wife speaks no English. And the guy from the IGFA is kind of helping.
Yeah.
So the lady's on the boat, and man, she's all of about 80 pounds. And she's covered from head to toe. I mean, you can't see anything on her.
And then the glasses, so there's no light getting in.
Right,
yes.
You can't see her eyes, nothing. It's like you're fishing with like a mannequin. Mm-hmm. And she's up there. And, tarpon fishing, the way we do it is it's hot and sunny for the first couple hours, and then the sun goes down. And when the sun goes down, she takes off all the cover up from the sun. And the lady is gorgeous. She's so beautiful that she was almost looked fake.
Right.
I mean, her skin looked fake. She looked fake. She was tiny, very soft-spoken. And I'll never forget that trip because we busted our ass to get a tarpon. And we couldn't get a bite. Dude, we could not get a bite. So I'm dropping them off on the river, and they're stepping out of the boat. And I still have one bait in the water. And all of them get off the boat, and that rod's in the rod holder. And sure enough, as soon as they all get off the boat, the rod goes down and the fish starts jumping. So the fish is taking off down the river one way. The client's on the seawall 15 feet the other way. So I pull over to the seawall. He hops back on the boat by himself, catches his tarpon, except his wife's not there. The guy from the IGFA's not there. And it's just me and him, and he can't speak any English. And let's just say that it was quite colorful.
Well, nice.
But the guy ended up getting his tarpon, and that's my Thailand snakehead story.
Good times.
And it's ironic that I took that guy, and now you come here to get you a snakehead.
That's right. Yeah, the bullseye snakehead.
Now, do you have some sort of method that you use to seek out the guides that can take you to get the different species that you want to get?
Initially, no. I mean, I think you were one of the first guides I ever paid.
Really?
Yeah, you were one of the first. It was you, and there was a guy in Utah to go after lake trout. Because you basically, to get a big lake trout, you have to be in a boat. And at the time, I didn't have one. And so at the time, I was just, when I booked you, for example, I just typed in tarpon fishing guides near Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and lunkerdog.com popped up, and I called you and a couple others, and I liked the vibe I got from you and booked it. But anymore, I try to get referrals. So as I start doing research, and that's a really cool thing with Facebook, Instagram, and stuff, when you start following other fishing, anybody that's into fishing, whether they're guides, just fishermen, I'll reach out. If I'm going to a certain spot, I'll start trying to find the people that I follow that are relative to that area.
Oh, that's a good way to do it.
And I just start asking, hey, if you were to get a guide in your area, what are some guides that you know that are good? And then I'll start making calls that way. And
that's a smart way to do it. Yeah, find out from the local that's actually into that type of fishing, and then work your way backwards.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think most people don't do it like that.
Yeah,
maybe that's why you're a little bit more successful than most on some of these travels.
Yeah.
Now, all these places that you went, in excluding the tarpon, what did you like? I mean, what did you think that what really floated your boat?
No, going into the Amazon, I don't think there's anything like it. Guyana is probably near the top of my list for a few reasons. One, just how remote it is. I mean, you fly into Georgetown, jump into a little puddle jumper plane, fly about 2 hours into the jungle, you land on a dirt airstrip, hop into a boat, and then go another 30 miles into a river, and then that's where you're camping, right? So you're literally in the middle of nowhere. So I loved the Indiana Jones aspect of that.
Right. And you were catching peacock bass?
Yeah. Peacock, and that's the other thing I loved about it is there was, I think, 40 documented species so far of what anglers have caught where I've gone there with this particular guide. But yeah, peacock bass, payara, arowana, of course the arapaima. That's what everybody goes down there to get, the big. I mean, it's kind of.
It's basically like a tarpon, but never
fresh
ends.
water. Yes, there's
like
unbelievable.
It's like a tarpon with a triple tail on it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, and a rock solid head. In fact, funny story, the first one I ever landed was the first day of the first time I went down. I've been there twice. And the guide, side story, I'll come back to it with this particular guide because I recognized him, but I didn't know why. And I'd never met him at the time.
Okay.
But anyway, this guide, he would always put us in the middle. They won't let us hold the head. And it was like, well, why? He's like, they're very ferocious. Is what the little Amerindian guides. They're English is their main language, but it's not the same, right? So he said they're very, very dangerous, aggressive, right? But I didn't really get that until I'm holding him and he's next to me, and that head starts kind of like a tarpon. They just boom, boom, boom. But that thing hit him in the shoulder, and I thought the sound, I thought his arm snapped. Like, really? I literally thought it snapped. And he was like, he just let this groan out and kind of dropped away from the fish. And it turned out it was major, like, bruise. He was out the rest of the week.
And how big was this fish, you reckon?
I think they guesstimated about 150 pounds.
Wow.
About
I saw the picture.
7 feet, yeah, something like that. It wasn't a huge one by any stretch.
What is like a really big one of those?
A really big one, I think the world record's in the 400-pound
really?
range.
I didn't know
that.
that.
And they get up to 10 feet long, if I'm not mistaken, give or take. There was one, in fact, this last year when I was down there, the Amerindian guide, which I guess they take turns, the way the village works that we fly in to takes turns on who the chief is. So the first time I was there, that guy was the chief. So it kind of threw me off seeing him being the guide when I was there the second time.
Huh.
And he was with another guide that hooked into a monster, they said. They fought, they told me a couple hours worth of a fight. It pulled them all over the lagoon, right? And finally broke off. They didn't land it. No pictures to prove it. So, of course, the fish is way bigger now, right? No. But the guide, the Amerindian guide that's lived in the jungle his whole life, he's from Apatiri village around where we're fishing. He said it's the biggest arapaima he's ever seen.
Really?
By far. His guesstimate, he said 500 pounds. That's somebody that's lived there the whole time. I never got to see it, but that would blow out the world record if that were the case.
How big are these guides?
I'm 5'10" and I tower over most of them.
They're little Indian dudes,
yeah.
Right? And they're trying to hold those big giant fish. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I went to Venezuela, but I never went to the Amazon. But I did go to a fish market when I was in Venezuela, where a lot of the fish came from the Amazon.
Yeah.
And I was floored. I saw some dead snooks in there that were so friggin' huge. And then I saw a whole bunch of fish in there. I didn't even know what the hell they were.
Yo, there's a lot of that too.
A lot of fish.
A lot.
Like, how the hell did I not know what these fish are? And these people are buying them hand over fist at the fish markets.
Yeah.
And I'm looking right at them, and I'm like, no clue.
Yeah, and what makes it hard too is you'll ask what kind of fish that is, and they'll give you the native name. But then when you go to like IGFA or anything to kind of look up what species it is, that doesn't coordinate. So then you're having to start from scratch to kind of figure out what the heck I just caught.
Right, and like 4 different names for it. You got the Latin name,
yes,
the IGFA name, the local name, the country,
which makes it difficult.
Huh.
Oh, but that guide that got tore up, that I thought his arm snapped, his name's Neville. The reason I ended up figuring out, because as we talked, we'd get in at night, we'd eat, and then I'd go over and talk with the Amerindian guides, just because it's interesting to hear a totally different way of living, and just, I don't know, I like that vibe to kind of figure out why people do the things they do. And
every time I do a destination, I don't do near as what I used to, but I was way more infatuated with the social lifestyle of the fishermen.
Yeah.
Than I was so much with fishing and the fish. It's like, well, if I lived here, or what would it be like, being, Bahamian or whatever.
Right.
And, you try to put yourself in their shoes. So to see their lifestyle and how they go about it and what they think about the fish, like my Bahamian buddies, they all think I'm totally nuts for tarpon fishing all the time. You can't harvest them.
Yeah,
you can't
right,
eat
yeah.
them. They
Why
fight,
catch them if you're not eating?
Right. They fight so much, and you're going to sweat when you pull them in, all that kind of thing. And they just totally don't get it. But I guess if I grew up a Bahamian, and looked at it from the way they look at it, I probably wouldn't get it either.
Well, you're fishing to eat, right? In a lot of cases.
You see what's on my table.
Yeah, you got the nice tarpon. What is that? Is that chrome?
I don't know what it is, but I got it for
Pewter?
I got it for Christmas, and we put it on the living room table. And I think it's pretty ironic that tarpon's sitting on my living room table, because pretty much that's what's fed the family for the last 20 years or so.
100%, yeah.
Even though we don't kill them, we don't harvest them, they still feed the family.
Right.
All right?
Right.
Now, you told me that at all these places that you've been, and when we were fishing the other day, and I asked you, I said, what do you think is your most favorite, or not your favorite, but the most productive? And you totally floored me when you said Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, hands down.
Explain that, because, I think the fishing is good here, but, I'm a good fisherman, and, I can kind of get the best out of it. But you would just think that going to these remote places, that the fishing would be so much better and easier and...
Right. Well, I guess it's from your perspective where I want to go and catch as many different species as I can, there's not a place that, if I want to go saltwater fishing in Fort Lauderdale, there's so many options I've got down here, right? From game fish all the way down to just, bottom fishing and catching whatever you want to catch, right? But on the freshwater side of it, you don't have to go to the Amazon to catch peacock bass.
Yeah, good
You don't have to go to catch redtail. You don't have to go to catch snakeheads. You could travel to Fort Lauderdale and cross several countries off your list because the species are right here. Now, they're not as big as you can get, but they're all here. You can fish a little puddle and catch 10 species in a day. Not have to leave the U.S.
Yeah, see, I never think of it like that. We just kind of take it for granted, all those different exotic fish that are swimming around in those canals.
Well, and a lot of people just kind of poo-poo them or look down, or you're supposed to catch and kill. I've heard. I don't know if that's the case.
Well, they're invasive species. The only species that we meant to have out there were the peacocks.
Right.
And that was supposedly to control the the typical, government management of wildlife. So we have these tilapias that are an invasive species.
Yeah.
So we're going to bring in another invasive species to eat the other invasive species.
Right.
And then all these different, fish companies that sell fish to aquarium or pet stores for aquariums and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe when they flush these fish or when they get
I've
rid of them.
always wondered how so many species got here. I was like, well, you guys have hurricanes, and maybe an aquarium got tore up, and
I'm not positive.
I don't know how you have so many species down here, but they're here.
And enough of them for people to roll around and catch them.
Right.
That clownfish, the knife fish.
Yeah, I got my first clown ever was earlier this year.
What are all the species that you got down here in Fort Lauderdale?
Oh, I don't know how many, but let's see. We've got that I've caught I bet you there's over 30 species I've caught just in Fort Lauderdale.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It's nuts.
That's totally nuts.
You literally don't have to try. You come, stay at whatever hotel you are, and go to the first body of water you come to. 100% certainty there's fish in there, and you can't say that about really anywhere else. South Florida is crazy.
It's totally nuts. And as much as they develop it, and as much as they kill off all the natural resources, the fish somehow, it's not the ideal situation, but somehow or another, the fish find a way to survive. And they're still out there. Rick and I just fished 2 nights ago. And, summertime fishing isn't always the easiest or the most consistent fishing. But we had an epic day.
Oh, it was awesome.
Yeah, we got a big tarpon around 75 pounds. We got a couple small tarpon, 25-pound class. We got a beautiful snook sight casting. We
got a little barracuda.
Yep, got some barracudas.
And then some, which was a new species for me, which I thought was cool, is the the horse-eye jack.
Oh, that's right. You got some horse-eye
I
jacks.
thought, granted, it was small, but I got a kick out of catching that just because it's a new species on my list.
Yep, you got the horse-eye
Yeah.
jack. And, it just turned out to be an epic day, and we had some really good weather.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, it ended up being really good weather. We were dumped on for the first hour and a half or so,
That's good.
but I loved it.
Right, exactly.
The rain down here is warm compared to Utah.
No, but I mean, the summertime, that's what you pray for a little bit of rain
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
afternoon, because
Cool
if
it
you
off.
don't get it, it's much tougher. So, anyway, the podcast. Have you been listening to any of these podcasts besides Rogan? These fishing
No,
podcasts?
I'm a Rogan guy because you never know. But no, I'm new to this is the first one I've ever actually been on.
Okay.
But listening to them, I'm getting more and more into them. There's a guy named Lance Egan that does one in Utah. He's on the U.S. fly fishing team.
Yeah, I think what happens, it's kind of like fishing spots.
I didn't know a lot of them. Yeah, that it might be because they're not terribly advertised. I would put it that way.
There's no budgets.
Yeah.
People just do them. You kind of got to find them organically, and then I'm forcing myself to go through all the different podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
The fishing podcasts. Most of them are freshwater. There's a few saltwater ones, and I don't know. I'm finding out that I don't know as much as I thought I did.
I learn. I get that every day. Anytime I go fishing something new, it's just like, geez, I know nothing about fishing.
But I think the best thing about it is I'm able to sit down with guys like yourself and actually spend the time, talking, in depth about things that you just can't talk in depth about. I don't know. Like, people think, like, when we're fishing together, like, oh, they run the boat for 5 hours together, they must have time to talk about everything and anything. And it just doesn't work out that way.
No. You're focused on trying to catch fish.
Right? And then
Yeah.
even if you were talking to me, half the time I wouldn't be listening because I'm waiting for the next fish to roll or looking for some bait to jump or whatever. And it just doesn't work out like that. So all these different dudes that I'm doing podcasts with, a lot of them I've known for, many years. But when the hell do you ever take an hour and sit down and just bullshit about whatever you want to talk about?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a guy thing too. My wife will come home and spend an hour with her friends, and she'll tell me this hour-long story about what they talked about. I'm like, how do you talk about that much stuff in 1 hour? And I'll come home and she says, hey, how was your fishing trip? Or what'd you talk about? Or it's like,
She's really
we didn't talk. What do you mean? You spent 8 hours with it. You didn't talk? I'm like, what do you want? What do you want from me, right?
Now, my wife's been saying that to me for 20 years, and she doesn't get it. But I'll take her out fishing. I'll take the worm out fishing, and she realizes how in depth it is, and there's so many different things that you got to do and and pay attention to. And I think a lot of times too, especially with my clients, I think a lot of times it's time for them to come out on the boat and not say much. And I think, of course, you have to be friendly and you have to be cordial and
Right.
you have to be pleasant, But on the other hand, when people want to go fishing, they want to experience it. A lot of it has nothing to do with conversation.
No.
So to let them sit there and just watch everything and try to soak it in, and then you answer a question for them, now and then, that kind of thing. But I think a lot's said by not saying anything.
100%. Well, just the experience, and especially down here. I mean, the intercoastal. I mean, you don't have to catch a fish, but the smells, the giant mansions you're going by, the yachts that are bigger than my house. I mean, just the sights are awesome.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many clients I have that they only want to fish here or Miami. Like I could take them off the beach, out in the ocean, and the fish will be out there. And like, no, Jeff, bring me up that river. They want to see those houses.
Yeah.
They want to see those boats. And then there's something that happens.
It's very unique here. I don't know that you've got that at other places.
No, it's very unique when it comes to that. This is like the epitome of urban fishing. And when somebody has a 100-pound fish on, and there's skyscrapers in the back, and there's chicks on G-strings, on the beach.
Yeah.
It's definitely, I don't know, it plays tricks on your mind. And
100%.
There's no other feeling like it. And the trophy fish that we have here is fairly phenomenal. Like I tell people when they book their trips, is like they want to know, well, gee, how many snook can we catch? And I'm like, well, maybe we'll catch 2 or 3 snooks. I said, but they're going to be nice snooks.
They're going to be big, yeah.
Yeah, I can't, I can't do like they do on the West Coast or in Everglades City or whatever, and put people on, a whole bunch of small fish if I want to.
Right.
Can I catch you a trophy? Yeah, we can do that if you're willing to work at it. But I can't put 20 small snook in the boat.
Right.
You know what I mean? And, so it's a little bit different, but the whole setting and everything.
Well, it's interesting you say that, too, because there's a guide I fish with when I'm doing work up in Tampa, and this last trip was within the year. I forget what month now, and we got into a snook, and I was happy I caught it, but I've been spoiled down here coming fishing with you because I pull it out, and it's if I would have caught it here, it would have been easily the smallest snook I've ever caught in Fort Lauderdale. Up there, they were like, "Man, that's a nice snook. We got to get a picture of that." And I was like, "Well, I'll take a picture of everything because it's a fish, right?" But I was happy I caught it, but it was they made a bigger deal of it, and so what you just said definitely rings true.
Well, I kind of been busting chops on the West Coasters for the existence of our social media. I tell them, you got your West Coast snook and your East Coast snook, and the West Coast snook are half ladyfish. They're just not holding the girth and the weight and that these fish are over here. Not to say that they don't have some big snooks.
Well, I've also, and correct me if I'm wrong here, aren't there different species of snook? Like there's different species. Some are longer, some are fatter.
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 different species.
Because a snook's a snook to me, but I don't know.
But they say that the common snook is the same snook on the West Coast and on the East Coast. I don't know about that. If they are the same snook, they definitely aren't on the same diet.
Right.
Because the snook, I don't know. We kind of piss some people off talking about this 40-inch snook club. And we just never thought of measuring a snook unless the regulations tell you have to measure it. But like to measure a snook to find out how big it is, we would always just call it pounds. So 30 pounds, 20 pounds or whatever. And you can catch a snook on the West Coast, let's call it 42 inches, like the one you caught. And that snook could weigh like 17 pounds. Then you can catch a 42-inch snook here, and that fish will weigh 27 pounds.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And they say it's the same species, but I don't know, dude.
Right. No, I haven't caught a very many of them on the other side, but there's definitely a difference. I mean, the fact that, again, I was happy that the guide was happy for me, right? And it was, I'm glad I caught it, but I wouldn't have gotten that reaction here.
You already gotten it out of me.
It's a snook. It's a snook. You even want a picture of this one kind of thing, right? But no, I've seen a difference, but I don't catch them often enough to really know.
Yeah, it's just an ongoing thing, and it's fun. Like I love to poke fun at the West Coasters with their small snooks and everything. And I've actually made a lot of friends by making fun of that.
Oh yeah.
And they get right back at me, but the next podcast I'm gonna do is going to be East Coast versus West Coast.
Oh, there you go.
But it's not going to be about snook.
Tupac Biggie kind of thing?
Kind of, yeah, Tupac Biggie, exactly. But it's not going to be about the snook. It's going to be about their fishery. And it just drives me crazy that I know so many West Coast people that are into fishing, that are into their water, that are into their beaches and everything. And I'm watching them make the same frigging mistakes that we made here on the East Coast with letting them overdevelop and just wiping out the estuaries and the fisheries and the little creeks and stuff that flow into the intercoastal. And the water taxis. Like the water taxis are starting to be a big thing it's a big topic on the West Coast. Tampa, Punta Gorda, Fort Myers.
No kidding.
They're doing water taxis. And when the water taxis started off here, it was kind of a cute, novel idea. But you fished between those water taxis, and you see what we got now. It's fucking insane.
Well, and one of the particular spots we fished, the only boat that passed us was water taxi. I should say boats. It was nothing but water taxis. That was it. That was the only boat traffic.
And that started with two 28-foot taxis in 1988 or something like that. And now it's just full-out war, just trying to fish in the intercoastal.
And they blow by you too. They don't care if you're there.
Right. So, like the West Coasters, like I just want them to pay attention. It's like this big highway that we have right here. You know what was there before that big highway, before 595 and all that? That was all estuary, marsh area.
No kidding.
Yeah, and there was little tiny creeks and canals that would flow into the new river. And we would go back.
It was the filtration system. I think you mentioned that. One of the few times we talked while we were fishing, you mentioned that.
Yeah, that was part of it. You had the sawgrass, you had oysters and barnacles and all sorts of different things that were in the.
And to stem that red tide business you guys have had a little bit.
And now, that whole area is just nothing but concrete and water pipes that dump drain water into the river.
Right.
And you don't see the little tiny spawning fish anymore. Like years ago, we'd go up there and we'd get our bait. And especially this time of year, you'd throw the net and you'd get little tiny snooks and little tiny tarpons in your net.
No kidding.
Yeah. And that's all gone.
Wow.
And I see those same areas all through the West Coast. I see those little creeks. I see those little estuaries. And then I look down the street and I see what used to be a stop sign, now a 4-lane, throughway.
Yeah.
And the houses aren't even built yet, but they're making the
Making
roads
way for it,
ready
yeah.
for it, and they're coming in. They're just demolishing it. It's driving me friggin' crazy. And just get look at what happened to Fort Lauderdale, Miami, and don't let it happen to the rest of the state. But unfortunately, I don't think people can see that, especially as clear as I can.
Or if you throw enough money at it, they refuse to see it.
Yeah, well, I think that's what it's all about. It's about the money, and the easiest way and the fastest way, to get a lot of money is to develop.
Right.
It's pretty simple.
Well, and even if you are for conservation, if you say you're for conservation, maybe I'm painting with a broad brush here, but there's plenty of people that say they're for something, and then enough cash comes their way, and all of a sudden it's not as important as they thought it was.
Yeah, it's amazing how cash can change your values
Right.
very quickly. That and then there's a whole lot of people that swear that they're conservation minded, but those are the same people that are sitting back and just watching the development and watching those same areas that are supposed to conserve.
Right.
And now all of a sudden there's a resort there. And it just goes on and on and on. But in all your travels, do you see that? Do you see different places kind of getting taken over by industry or different estuaries and fishing? Or is that more of just a United States thing?
No, there's definitely other places I fished. I wasn't there to see it happen, but you take the Mekong Delta, with even if it's just dams, right?
Right.
The fisheries, from what I've told some of the guys that I was fishing with while I was there, they said, yeah, you came here before the dams, and the fish were triple the size. The Mekong catfish, which you can good luck finding if it's not in a pond now that they're trying to grow them to throw them into the river. It's almost impossible to catch those wild now, right?
Really.
Same with like the Siamese carp, those really giant big carp you see. You don't see those anymore, and it's because of my understanding is because of the dams that they've placed, so they can't move upriver where they spawn and all that stuff, and then just the junk being dumped into the rivers now, as you mentioned, with drain water and whatever. It's you take what the U.S. has, and it's a different ball game in some of those Asian countries with literally everything. That's the garbage, right?
Right.
You dump it in the river and it's gone, so it's gone, right?
So it's not just a United States thing.
The development thing from the areas I fished at, Fort Lauderdale being the example, yeah, I've never seen anything quite like down here. But no, there's places everywhere that are getting taken.
Yeah, the humans are pretty much just kind of taking
Killing
over.
Well, even the guide that I go down to Guyana with, he told me when he first got there, he was he's the one that kind of started and got the Amerindian tribe there in Apatiri to take over. It's not his thing, but he's given it to them and gives them jobs, because there's no jobs there. They have to go to the mines in Brazil or something of that nature. There's nothing keeping them in the village. So the young people are leaving, and it's left, all the older people in the village. So he's got that part of it set up, but I forgot where I was going with that. What was, what was the question?
Just about development.
Yeah. So even now, Guyana hasn't been on the map for fishermen for, I would say a decade at most. I don't even think it's been that long. But he's seen how different the fishery is just in that time, from it first being discovered to now it's a destination for somebody wanting to catch a crazy fish on a fly rod or whatever, right?
Right.
And it's still pretty pristine, but for me, I'd have nothing to compare it to. But he said, no, it's already changed.
Yeah, no, I think it's just a worldwide issue.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to...
And I've heard that with Papua New Guinea. I haven't been there yet. Hopefully next year.
You're going to try to do that one?
I need to do the...
Isn't that like crazy dangerous to be there?
Some parts is my understanding. That's why I go with guides that have been there multiple times and have ins with the tribes and whatnot. I don't know we're going too far in, because they've still got like 40 or 50 uncontacted tribes there, from my understanding. So...
Have you been to Panama yet?
I have not been to Panama. It's on my list. Costa Rica's on my list.
Okay. Panama's my favorite go-to destination for fishing.
What mainly the billfish?
Well, yeah, the billfish. I mean, when I went there, it was more for catching black marlin than anything else, because we don't get them out here in the Atlantic. But just the experience of Panama, it's right next to Costa Rica and all those other places that you can catch, pretty much the same fish. Mm-hmm. But Panama's a little bit different. Yeah, there's a tourism market, but it's not like, the cheesy style tourism market that you see in a lot of different places. And the culture around fishing in Panama, the natives and the people that live in the city are like really into it. Like there's a whole sport fishing culture in Panama that, you can, when you get there, you're sitting down with other guys. And most of the places, you get that, but it's usually like in a lodge. Right. It's not like part of the city. You know what I mean? And then just the people, it's no nonsense. Not that there's no crime, but, as long as you...
It's pretty U.S. friendly too, isn't it?
Very U.S. friendly. And I don't know, that place just always seems special. Every time I fish there, and I've been going, I don't know, I've been there maybe 4 times.
Oh, nice.
But the first time I went,
all saltwater?
All saltwater.
Because I hear the peacock bass fishing down there is insane too, but of course I've never done it. But
I haven't gone inland fishing. But
you're not a big freshwater guy though, right? I've
not much of a freshwater guy. I'm not a freshwater guy. It's just, you grow up on the canals here in Fort Lauderdale.
Right. You catch a couple of snook and tarp, and all of a sudden a largemouth bass isn't that cool.
Well, but I tell you what is cool. Is going out to the Everglades and getting lost out there in that sawgrass and that wilderness out there. Mm-hmm. And, the fish are a bonus. And that I enjoy. Every once in a while, and I mean every once in a while, every 10 years or so, I go out there. I actually went out there a couple of years ago with my guy I fished with, Mitchell, and we took his egret and we buzzing around, and that was one of those real dry summers, so there's these huge fires out there. And when you pull up to these areas where, it's burning for miles and miles, and there's just smoke and soot everywhere, and you're just watching it, kind of like a volcano or something. But the fish, it's hard to get me fired up about freshwater fish.
Yeah.
I mean, even eating them.
Yeah.
I enjoyed a fried catfish or whatever, but I think I prefer saltwater fish.
You got to try a peacock. Now, I don't know that I'd eat the fish down here, the freshwater, in some of the areas I've caught them in the city.
Are you worried about that?
Don't think I'd eat them, but
no, those won't bother you. Matter of fact, you should eat those. That'll help your immune system. If you can fight through any type of that bacteria, then you can live forever. Anyway, Rick, thanks for coming in and doing the podcast. Yeah. We wish you luck with your snakehead tomorrow.
Hey, I appreciate it.
And for all you guys that would like to follow Rick and his travel destinations and all the crazy fish that he catches, tell them how to follow you on Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram, it's at Rick's Real Adventures. Facebook, it's at Rick's Real Adventures. And then my blog, there's links that you can see that. I've actually got to do a little bit better job of keeping that part of it up to date. But
just keep catching the fish.
Instagram, the pictures are all going to be on Instagram. I just got to do a better job of putting out the written out version of what happened.
All right.
Yeah.
And also congratulations this week on getting your Fort Lauderdale Grand Slam.
Yes.
It's not too often you can brag about getting a slam. If you guys don't know what a Fort Lauderdale Grand Slam is, that's when you catch a barracuda, a jack, a tarpon, and a snook all in the same night. And I actually had a couple slams this week. This is the time to get your Fort Lauderdale Grand Slam. And thanks for coming in and doing the podcast. Thanks for being a great client. And it's Rick from Rick's Real Time Adventures.
Thanks. It's been real.
Run that dog, pal.
Yep.